As I've said, there are multiple recordings in Learn already, and honestly, this Word document is pretty complete, and I did something unusual for this one. Not only did I, do the normal. I mean, it says it's 15 pages, but there's a lot of screen caps, and to be honest, the final, I think it's, what is it? The final 5 pages? Yeah, the final 5 pages are just one long terminal dump of my activity. So you can just see everything that I did in one long activity. Now there's some web stuff that you don't see that exists here as well. But at the end of the day, you can see the entire terminal process as one long stream of events. And there's a lot of screen caps in this as well. So this is a very detailed one. I really like this one. I like this activity a lot. I think we're going to have fun with it. 1 second here, I've got to fix my display. There we go. All right. I don't know why I bother. I rarely use these things anyway. But as always, as you can see on the first page of today's presentation, you really do need to understand your environment. And it's especially relevant today because, it's like we've seen lately. We're going to deploy something to our target machine, and it's going to need a path back to where our listener is running on our Kali machine. As we've seen in the past, we're going to deploy something that's going to spawn a remote shell for us to take advantage of. And as we've seen in the past, we're going to use the netcat command to understand, or not as a listener on the Kali machine. We're going to run netcat here, so we have to have a path from our Mr. Robot back to that listener, and that needs to be modified when we deploy our payload. So let's take a look at that. It's based on, this activity is based on the Mr. Robot series, which I haven't seen. Everybody tells me I should see, and I will see one day. But it's an example. And yes, I did get it from Vulnerable Hub website, vonhub.com. It's an example of people using alternative marketing. It's a really clever VM to take a look at. As always, we're going to start by importing the appliance. Go to wherever you've downloaded your target machine and import the Mr. Robot OVA file. At this point, the import settings are probably okay. We get some clues even on this page. The description comes up as WordPress. Now, WordPress is a notoriously vulnerable site, but right away, or not a site, a CMS application, a web application that manages content management systems. So when we see WordPress, it's something we're going to want to take a look at. Now, more recent versions of WordPress have gotten better, but it's kind of like Samba. When you see WordPress, you want to start focusing your attack on WordPress. Okay? So we're going to import that, and as always, we're looking for clues. And now that it's up and running, we want to, as always, verify our settings. And this time, we have to, on my import anyway, we actually have to really fix this. We have to say, no, I don't want it to attach to the bridge. I want to attach it to the host-only network. I want to select the correct host-only adapter, and I want to set my promiscuous mode to allow all. Okay? And we still have some invalid settings, but when I move my mouse on top, it complains about the graphic adapter. And we've seen this before, and by and large, we can ignore it. Newer versions of VirtualBox want us to use the VMS VGA. If you take a look at this one, this uses VBox VGA, which is the older adapter, but for a command line interface that this server is going to run in, it's fine. And as I've said, you don't want to go changing things unnecessarily if you're performing a software audit. I need to modify the network so I can communicate with it on my network, but I don't have to change the video settings, so I'm not going to change this video settings. So that should be good. Everything else should be good once we import it. And again, we've got that description and a bit of a clue there. So we're going to start our VM and watch it power on and see what we see. And we also see Bitnami as it fires up. Now, I don't know if you know who Bitnami is, but they're the people who make a lot of full stacks, not just LAMP or WAMP, but they'll make a full stack including software like WordPress. It's possible to download an entire WordPress full stack from Bitnami. So again, we're getting indications that it might be WordPress. We're not getting many other clues though. We see it's working. We can see the hard drive working. We see our processor working, but all we get is a Mr. Robot login screen. So no clues other than a couple of indications that it might be a WordPress site, but we always look. We're going to log into our Kali, and we are going to begin our attack. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to just yell out. As always, one of the first things we are going to do is we are going to start with a network scan. We are also going to keep track of our environment, so we're going to have a text editor. I need to know my Kali IP address. For me, it's 227. I need this because I know I'm going to eventually need to deploy a payload that talks back to a listener. I don't know that yet in the real world, but I know that I need to understand my environment, so I'm going to start annotating my environment. Once that's done, I can then do an Nmap of my host-only network, and we shall see what we see. So one thing that I find interesting now is that recently when we were running the Nmap command, we had a bunch of services being returned on our 56.1 adapter. I'm not seeing that anymore, and I haven't done anything with Nmap, so I'm guessing there's been an update deployed on Windows that I didn't really see that has addressed this problem, okay? Because I'm no longer seeing my 56.1 adapter when I do my Nmap scan. I don't know, are you guys seeing 56.1 when you do your Nmap scan?
I don't know, my Kali froze, so I haven't done it yet.
Okay, sorry. Is anybody else seeing 56.1?
I'm still downloading the OVA.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. Okay, well I'm gonna keep
I
going.
don't see it.
You don't see it? Okay, and we've seen it recently, so there's been that thing that I was complaining about. One of my InfoSec students told me that that might be fixed in the near future when they release an update, and it seems like possibly that they've done that, because really you shouldn't be displaying that information. You should be turning off that kind of intel gathering in any operating system, but especially a modern client operating system like Windows. So we get two indications. We know 227 is our Kali, so we can assume that 209, for me anyway, is going to be my target. So now I've got a target, I can do a detailed scan on it. Let's just do that. And again, we shall see what we see. However, as I said when we took a look at the BT risk, it's going to be less about version attacks and more about general web attacks. And that's really what we're probably going to see here. We've got Apache running, we've got SSH, we're not really seeing a lot of information. We're running Linux, but we kind of knew that watching it boot up. We're not getting a lot of extra information other than we're running a website on both regular and TLS traffic. So, okay, that's fine. We know we have a website. Let's do some web enumeration at this point. So I'm going to start with derb, and I'm going to attack 209. And actually, this isn't even an attack. This is a scan of 209. Directory 0, interesting. Oh, there's an admin directory. That's always tantalizing. Audio. Weird. Blog. Okay, blog might indicate the WordPress site that we saw earlier. Blogs are often used, or the blog directory is often used alongside of a WordPress site, so those are all promising. And we're going to just let it run its gambit. There's a lot going on here. Okay, so that's taking a while. Oh, we've got some results here. We've got an index.html and index.php, and we're only into the J's of our keyword search. So I'm going to take a look at this site while that is running. I'm going to right-click on that. Okay, well, it's not letting me open it, so that's fine. I'll just open up my browser. And we'll go to it manually. So I'm going to 192.168.56.209. And hello, Grub Linux. Now, first thing you need to know, that's a skit running. That's not a real login. If you've seen the Mr. Robot series, this is actually just a dynamic web page, and it's got a bunch of stuff going on. It's cool. I'm going to be done in about an hour from now. I figure I'll be done. So you can go through this, and it's pretty cool. So when you type in things like join, it'll walk you through the process here. And it kind of looks like an AI is talking with you or something like that. So check it out. It's a pretty cool interface, but at the end of the day, it doesn't help us with hacking. It looks cool. And this goes back to my earlier comment that this is probably some kind of a marketing thing released by the group who are trying to do that. Because a lot of work went into this. If you... Oops, join. Oops, I hit Control R and now I'm seeing something weird. That's peculiar. So I went back and I tried again. I actually didn't mean to do that, that just happened. I wanted to go over here, and as you can see, it's still trying to run, but we're seeing some cool results. WP load, WP login, WP. These are all indications of WordPress. We're also seeing a robots.txt file here. Okay? For whatever reason, I can't open it up though. Okay, I'm going to open up another tab because this is all my results for derb, and it's taking a long time. I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to do my Nikdoit scan now as well. And again, it's 209 is my target. So we'll let those run, but let's talk about what we're seeing in these results. Okay. WordPress config, WordPress content, robots.txt, a PHP my admin page, 403 error, so that's not necessarily good. We've seen the index page, so again we're looking for clues. Okay, so I'm going to let both of these run and let's see what it tells us. First one I want to look at is this robots.txt. Now, if you don't know about this, I don't know if you've been told about this or not. But the robots.txt file on servers is actually a page that tells web crawlers, like the Google search tools, that crawl the website looking for content. The robots.txt, in theory, tells those crawling tools not to consider this content in your results. It's basically telling search engines to not bother with key 1 of 3.txt and not bother with fsocity.dic, this dictionary file. .dic is actually talking probably about dictionaries. Now keep in mind, we see a lot of these VMs used in capture the flag type activities. And in the real world, I'm not in the real world, but in a capture the flag competition, if you were trying to figure out what was going on, you may have found one of the keys. So I would copy that and I would replace robots.txt with that result. And then there would be some kind of management software running somewhere. I would log in with my team. I would enter that key, and depending on how quickly I got it relative to everybody else, I would get a certain amount of points. But that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in cracking the site and elevating ourselves to root, if possible. So let's take a look at this FSOCity dictionary file. All right. So I'm going to highlight that and replace my robots.txt with that file name. And it tells me it's a 7 megabyte text file that it thinks is source code. Well, I'm going to save that and take a look at it. I'm not going to open it up in GVim. If you've ever used it, it's a little unwieldy. So I'm just going to save it as a file. And then it gets probably put in my downloads directory. Okay? Still doing its scans. Still trying to figure out what's going on, but that's okay. We'll let it run its course. So I'm going to open up a new tab because I'm still running my web enumerations here. I don't remember it taking that long last time. That's okay, we can adapt. And I'm going to take a look at that file I downloaded, that fsociety.dic file. Now you can use Vi if you're comfortable with Vi, or you can use Nano, or frankly, you can use Mousepad. Now Mousepad doesn't like huge files, and that's a pretty big file, so I'd probably use Nano for that. And when I take a look at it, it is, as we thought, a dictionary file. Okay, that's interesting. So it's a dictionary list. Now, let's step out of the little skit I'm walking through and let's talk real world here. Technical mitigations have gotten so good with our infrastructure that really at the end of the day, the weakness continues to be one of the main weaknesses, and the most significant weakness these days is people. People doing stupid things with passwords. We've seen it time and time again when we're attacking these sites. So if you want to go after someone, red team, or purple team, you're doing an audit, or, you've broken my heart and decided to be a criminal hacker and you're trying to take someone down. I really hope you don't do that because it would break my heart. But let's assume that you are trying to get access to a site. One of the things you're going to have to do going forward is some intel gathering. You're going to have to find information and try and incorporate that information into your attack. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate with this. I'm not going to make you develop your own dictionary of words to use in a cracking activity. This one hands it to you. Unfortunately, when you start looking through that dictionary file, there's a lot of stuff in there. One of the ways we can see just how big it is the word count. we can count the number of lines with fsocity.dictionary, and we see that there are 860,000 entries in this file. And if you go through, you will start seeing that there are some duplicates. So we're going to need to clean this up if we're going to use this dictionary. Asterisk, and I'm going to come back to that in a sec. So first thing I need to do, I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to call it Mr. Robot because I'm going to start creating it and working with artifacts. I'm going to copy my F-Society dictionary. I'm actually not even going to copy it. I'm going to move it. I'm going to move my F-Society, FSO City dictionary file. I'm going to move it into my Mr. Robot directory. Alright? Basically, I've downloaded and placed that dictionary file into this folder. And as we saw, because I'm going to need this again, it has 860,000 entries. There's a couple of different ways of cleaning this up so that you've got a much cleaner list to work with. Okay? And it's still looking. It's still trying to find stuff here, and that's fine. There's a WP login. Alright, there's a WordPress login page. So I would, in the real world, let that go through, and I'm going to continue letting it look for stuff because it's shown me some interesting results. But let's focus on the Nikto results here. Nikto, I don't see the robots.txt file here. Maybe it is and I'm just missing it. But again, the reason why we run both or we run multiple enumeration tools is because one of them may find something that one of the other ones miss. But right here we've got a wplogin.php page. So let's take a look at that as well. Okay. There it is. So we found that. Perfect. We found this. We found this. Let's go to a new tab and check out wp-login.php. And as we thought, we have a WordPress login page. Alright, now I kind of stepped a little out of sequence so I could keep the lecture going without sitting and staring at, a bunch of text scrolling by. Okay, but now you see what's going on. We want to try and crack this site. If we try doing SQL injections, it won't work. You're welcome to play, you're welcome to manipulate and try stuff. I don't know the way of getting SQL injections to work on this page. Does it exist? Possibly. I never say never. Okay? But at this point, we're going to try and figure out some user information. So I'm going to try logging as an admin password and just see what I get. And right away, and this is why I've been so difficult when it comes to creating secure websites. We get a message saying invalid username. Now, that's not good, alright? It's not saying invalid credentials, it's saying forget the password, you don't even have a valid username. So if I can find a valid username to log into this site, I can then try cracking the passwords, alright? And that's what we're going to do. For that to work, we need a dictionary of results to use. And that's where the fsocity.dictionary file comes into play. So it's going to be busy. So this is my nmap scans. This is derb. This is Nikto. Alright, and this is, well, we don't really have a name for it yet, but what we're going to do is dictionary cleanup. Alright, actually no, what this is going to be actually is our Hydra username. Let's call it that. And you'll see why in a second. So I've got this dictionary file, 860,000 entries in it. I need to clean this up. So there's a couple of ways to do that. And if you take a look at the top of page 3 of the handout, I'm going to sort and look for unique values. It's probably the easiest way to do it. It kind of changes the order of the entries though, and that may or may not have an impact. But let's try it anyway. We're not destroying the old one, we're merely creating a new one where we're trying to remove duplicate entries. And the easy way to do that is to cat the F Society dictionary file to the sort, where we're going to sort our results and then pipe those to the unique command, and then redirect all of those results to a new dictionary file. So I'm going to cat, and I'm going to pipe that to sort dash u. I don't think that's case. I think that's case insensitive. I've forgotten what the dash u switch does. I'm going to pipe that to the unique command, and then I'm going to redirect the result of those commands to a new fsocity.dic file. Alright, so I'm creating a new fsocity dictionary file with those commands. It should be pretty quick. When I do an ls-l, it is, quite a bit smaller, like 1/72 the size of the old file. And when I do the word count of new fsocity file, I am down to 11,000 from the original 860,000. Quite a bit smaller dictionary to iterate through. Unfortunately, it's now all alphabetical. So whatever I thought was the most popular one before is no longer at the top of my dictionary. Is that good? I don't know. I don't know yet. Actually, I do. Alright? It helps with one word. It helps with finding the username. It helps with finding the password. But it makes finding the username take that much longer. Okay? Regardless, we've sorted our results. Now we're going to try and figure out the username. And I really want people to understand this. Because I have an error related to the username, I can use that information to try and figure out a valid username. I'm going to hit this page until I no longer get an invalid username warning. I'm going to iterate through some dictionary, maybe this dictionary here, until I get a valid username. Okay, and once I have that, I will see what the error message is about the invalid password, and then I'll iterate through and try and find the correct password. We've done something like this with Medusa when we were trying to attack the SSH service in Metasploitable. But we're not. I think you can get Medusa to do a web page hack, but in my experience, Medusa is great. Medusa is great for a service like SSH or Samba. If you want to attack those services, Medusa is awesome. If you want to actually attack a web page, however, I think Hydra is a little bit better a tool for this kind of activity, and that's what we're going to use. And if you see at the top of page 4 of the handout, you will see the Hydra command that we are going to use. Okay? And it looks something like this if I don't mistype it. Hydra -L for a list of users. Uppercase indicates a list. Lowercase indicates an individual entry. So for the user, we're going to use our dictionary. Tab is your friend. What I'm telling this Hydra is, we're going to attack this page. I want you to iterate through my new dictionary file and try each user on that page. The password is going to be whatever. And literally it can be anything you want here. It can be blah. Because we don't care about the password right now. We're trying to figure out that username. Alright? So you can use whatever you want. Alright? We need a target. 192.168.56.209, I believe is my target. Perfect. Okay? Now, I am going to attack it using the post. When I take a look at this page, I'm going to Control U to view the source. I need to figure out how I'm going to attack it. Let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on, and let's zoom in and make the font a little bit bigger. So I've got my form here. The method is post. It seems to call itself with a method equals post. The form's name is login ID. There seems to be a username, and it's called log. Yeah, the username, the field name is log for login. The password is pwd for password. So these are the input object names. The ID and the ID confuse me sometimes, sorry. So the login username is log. The login password is pwd. Alright? The method is post, and that's the action field. It's also the form name, but it's also the action field, and that's what we're going to use. Okay? All of that information will determine how we're going to run the Hydra command. First, we know it's a post, so we're going to use the http-post-form module. And with that, we need to set some parameters, and they go inside of a single quote. The first parameter is the action, wp-login.php, all right? That's the first argument. The second argument is the usernames, and that is log. And that's going to be equal to caret user. The caret user, caret, is a way of saying take for the username whatever you defined as the list of login users. So I'm saying as you iterate through this, each entry, submit that in the user value. Okay? And pwd for the password is equal to whatever you specified as the password here, which is blah or whatever. It's just a placeholder, it doesn't really matter. Okay? The next argument is the submit, which is actually the name of the submit button. Input type equals submit, name equals WP submit. So we're defining that as well. Sometimes you don't have to, but we are going to. All right? So we're going to do this login form. These are the parameters that go with that login form. And we are looking for failures is equal to invalid username. If you see a failure, move on to the next one. And we get that right from here. And I try to match the case. Okay? I could say error : invalid username, but the more you type, the more likely you are to screw something up. Okay? When I view this source, there's no extra formatting, there's strong error, strong : space. You might need to supply all of that, so find something simple, like the string invalid username. There's no formatting around it, it just gets returned. I like that, I'm going to use that as the failure. And we'll see what we see. Now, if I don't mess this up, I am missing something. I don't have the correct address. Well, it even recommends the parameter must start with a slash. So I don't have the valid address. And I tell you, I should copy and paste this, but regardless. Okay? And we'll see if it tries to figure it out. And honestly, this can take some time. So I'm not going to sit here and watch. It usually takes about 3 minutes or so to figure it out. So we're going to, if you take a look halfway down page 4, you can actually see the successful results. Just like we were doing with when we were trying to crack the SSH private key. I don't think I did that with you. Did we crack private SSH keys together, or was that the other section? Did we ever use John the Ripper to crack a private key? I'm asking.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I think that was the other group. So ignore that. Because this is going to take some time, I actually give you the results in the Word document, and we're not going to wait. Okay? It's just gone for 1 minute. It hasn't found anything. It then goes for 3 minutes, and then it goes 15 minutes, etc., etc., etc. So it lets you know that it's working. And if you're ever curious, you can always check your status bar. See the red indicating network activity. Red, green flashes indicates network activity. So it's trying to communicate with that web server. All right. So even though I don't see anything here, it's trying. Okay. So I'm going to let it run, and after a certain amount of time, as you can see on page 4 of the handout, it is going to find Elliot. And because I've sorted it case insensitive, it's going to find all three pretty quickly. Elliot, Elliot, Elliot. All uppercase Elliot, uppercase E Elliot, and all lowercase Elliot. Now, if you're a user and you're trying to log into a system, are you going to set different case for your username? Probably not, because people are lazy. All right? So it looks like one of the possible acceptable credentials is the username Elliot. Well, let's try that and see what happens in our form. So I'm just going to assume Elliot lowercase. And again, whatever. As the password, it doesn't matter right now. The password you entered for the username Elliot is incorrect. I never, ever, ever want to see that on your work. Please. Okay? This is what hackers do. They look for clues. When I first logged in, it said the username was invalid. You never want to give that, because now they can use tools like Hydra to figure out a valid username. And we've talked about this. The username is the easy piece, but it is still half the equation. I'm halfway logged into this now. Okay? I'm halfway into this system. Now I just need to figure out a password. And I've got a dictionary of possible passwords that I can use. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go back. There we go. So it's found Elliot. Perfect. I can hit Control C and I can stop that. And right away, and this is what I keep telling you guys about with John the Ripper. The session file hydra.restore was written. Type hydra-r to resume the session. We see the same kind of thing with John the Ripper, where these things, once they've cracked a password, they don't want to go over and do it again. They're going to pick it up and try again from that point. So John the Ripper, Hydra, Medusa, what's it called? Hashcat. All of these password cracking tools will have session management that you sometimes need to get rid of if you want to re-crack passwords. Okay, we don't need to do that this time. We've cracked the password for Elliot. They all look viable, but as I said, most people tend to use all lowercase, and that seems to be agreeable here. So now what I need, and that's Hydra username. Now that I've got a valid username, let's see if I can figure out a Hydra password. We are now at the top, we are now halfway down page 4, not page 5, that makes sense, of the handout. Where now I'm going to run the Hydra command again. Lowercase l this time. The login is Elliot. I don't need a list. I have a valid username. I am going to, however, as a password, use my new, I need to be in the correct directory. Hydra-L Elliot. This is why tab is your friend. All right. Right away, I could see I was in the wrong directory because I tried to use the tab and it didn't work. dash uppercase P, because this time I'm not going to use a single password. I'm going to iterate through a list of passwords. And it is new F Society, FSO City, I should say, FSO City dictionary. Okay? I need to use that 192.168.56.209, was it? At 209 server. And again, I'm going to try and crack HTTP form, post form. Is that correct? Post form. Must be. I have it in my notes. Okay? I cannot type today. Okay? So, that looks good. And again, I need to understand exactly what's going on here. Okay? Last time, what we were looking for was invalid username. This time, username Elliot. If I highlight this, and again, I'm trying to avoid failures, which is the dash F system. If I take a look at the source, the password you entered for strong, Elliot Strong, is incorrect. Nice and simple. That's what I'm going to look at for this. I'm not going to go through all the other stuff and maybe include or not include the HTML results. A nice simple string here, that works. Let's use that. Okay, so I'm going to use the is incorrect string. All right, so just like before, I need to specify that action, which is wp-login.php. With that, I need to specify the log value again, which is equal to, this time, even though it's just one result, we're still going to use user. So each time it tries, it's going to try Elliot. Perfect. And pwd this time is going to iterate through the pass values of the new FSO City dictionary, and wp-submit is equal to log. I don't think I did that last time. F is equal to is incorrect. Closing the tick. So it's very similar to what we did here. I didn't do the WP submit though value, did I? Or did I forget it? Yeah, you see, I didn't do that on purpose, but I've noticed that before. I didn't specify the value of WP submit. I just called the submit button. And this time I said the WP submit is equal to login. It seems that either one is acceptable. And I've seen that before. Obviously it's not double quotes at the end, it's a single quote. I'm just making sure I have not messed this up. Is incorrect. And again, we're looking for the failure is incorrect. If we knew what the success string was, we would look for the success string. But we only have a failure string, so that's what we're looking for. It is recognizing that there's a session running. I could have used the -I, but I'm going to start a new session and just let it go through and see what it sees. And if it's not complaining, if it's not throwing any errors after a minute, after about 7 or 8 minutes again, it's going to find a password. Okay? Any questions on that? By way of recap, this is one of the more nuanced things. You can use these, but you have to use them in the context of the target environment. I have to look for clues in the form that I'm using. I have gotten clear indications of a correct username versus a correct password. I can take those and I can use those. And this is why I don't spend a lot of time talking about credential stuffing, but this is why it's important to ensure that your users are not reusing passwords from other locations, because if I didn't have this information, I could go through a compromised list of usernames and passwords that we see all over the place, and I could supply username and password combinations using something like Hydra, and rather than iterate through usernames and then iterate through passwords, I can just supply known username passwords or email password combinations from existing dumps. It's called credential stuffing, and it is a huge problem. It is a huge problem. And if you're going to audit your website, you want to try some credential stuffing to mitigate against that. You also want to go through those compromised lists, see if any of your users are using those by testing credential stuffing, and then say your account has been deleted until you fix this password problem. It's a known, your password's compromised elsewhere. It's a known problem. You need to fix your password. Okay? It's very, very important. I've talked to students who've taken my security courses in the past, and a year ago, that was their number one concern, was credential stuffing. So file that away. After 7 or 8 minutes, it'll find the password, so we can try that password, and it is seen halfway down page 5 of today's handout. And it is, or page 6 I should say, ER, ER28 dash uppercase ER 0652, which is apparently his badge number or something like that, which is something you should never use. But once we try that, we are in. And more importantly, we are in to the admin panel. Okay? How do I know? Because it says WordPress admin. This is the admin panel into the system. This is awesome. That means that I can add things like remote shells to this website if I want to. Okay? Now let's again assume that this is some kind of a red team activity and we're trying to hide our behavior. Okay? I'm going to assume that this is a red team activity and I'm trying to hide my actions. There it is. Wow, I just happened to move on top of it when it worked. Perfect. So it found it, and there's the password there, ER280652. That is the password for Elliot on this machine using a post method inside of a form. Perfect. I've got the credentials. I log in and I see that I am in the WordPress admin portal. There's a couple of ways of deploying a payload at this time. Don't worry about these errors here. This makes sense because our network is set up in such a manner that we can't, this server here cannot access the internet. It can only access the host-only environment. Okay, that's fine. So we can ignore that. But we want to deploy some kind of a remote shell so we can get control of this machine. There's a couple of ways of doing it. We can create a new page, or we can add our payload to some existing page in the system that we know people see rarely. Now this is a content management system, which means people rarely type in addresses directly. They search something out and then they click through the site, and unless somebody is screwed up, you very rarely get a 404 error. So that's perfect. If people rarely see the 404 error, which has a template in WordPress, if we manipulate that template with our payload, we can force a 404 error, but hide our behavior from others. They might not see it. Okay? So, one of the ways to do that is to go into the appearance and take a look at the editor. So you can click on appearance, or you can hover over appearance and select editor. I don't care. If you click on appearance, it pops out and you can select editor, or you can just hover over appearance and select editor. I don't care. What I want
just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Right. Yeah, so the password that we found for Elliot, was that in that dictionary? Because
yes.
That's crazy because it's not really, I mean, I don't think that's a horrible password, right? It's a bunch of characters and numbers and dashes, and that actually found it.
That's an excellent point, Marcus, and that is exactly why we do our own OSINT, it's called, Open Source Intelligence Gathering, OSINT. You try and gather as much information. We talked about this, social engineering, trying to find information about people so that you can create your own dictionary. There are also tools that will take those strings and modify them in normal ways. Like, how many times have you had a password and they say, hey, you need to update your password, we have stricter rules in place, and you just add a character at the end, like the exclamation mark? Like, I don't want you to tell me, but how many times have you done that? You think hackers don't know that? You think there aren't tools out there to add, you know, numbers like 111 or 123 or 1234 at the end of something and then a character? You can create dictionaries by taking known things and then just adding random characters to them at the end and using those to attack. And that's why we do OS intelligence gathering. And if you take a look under information gathering in Kali, there's an entire group of tools that will help you go out and find out information. Now it's getting harder. This was a lot easier a while ago, but a while ago you used to be able to go through sites like LinkedIn, because most people had an account in LinkedIn and you could go find people who worked for a company. I want to attack Acme. Okay, let's go to the Acme. Let's go to LinkedIn and look for everybody that works at this site. Oh, look, there's a list of users. There's their email addresses at the Acme site. That gives me a list of user IDs to try on that network. It's called OS Intelligence Gathering, and it's one of the tools that if you ever become a red team or a consultant brought in to do a security audit, that's one of the things you're going to do, is look to see what you can find out about people online. Great question. Any other questions? While that was brought up, let's do one more thing. Okay? We went through with this command and I iterated through the new FSO City dictionary file after I cleaned it up. If I had used the old one, the unsorted dictionary, and just ran it as is, right away it finds a result for Elliot. So it seems the username Elliot is there. So again, I could try that in my password cracking and it would have been a lot quicker here, but if I do the same thing, it takes a long time unless you sort the dictionary. So there's no easy way, all right? Elliot was one of the first things that it found in that dictionary. Elliot is one of the first names that gets returned. If you try the same thing with the password, it takes quite a bit longer to discover it. Which is better, using the unmodified dictionary or the sorted and unique valued dictionary? There's no easy answer. You just try everything all the time. Any questions on that? Any other questions? Great question, by the way. Okay, so let's go back to trying deploying our payload. Okay, so I've opened up the appearance and I've selected the editor because I want to either make a new template or, as I said, let's use an existing template. The 404 template, that's something you rarely see when you go to a website such as a WordPress, a Joomla, a Drupal, any of these sites that are content management systems. They manage all of those links for you. So unless somebody really screws up, you're not going to get a 404 error. So what I want to do is I want to add my payload at the bottom of this template. What payload do I want to use? Well, I can go, that's good, that's Hydra password. Let's make this bigger. Let's open up a new tab and I'll zoom in. And I haven't looked at my notes. Shit. No, I'm right on cue. Okay, I'm halfway down page 6. No, everything's perfect. So I want to find some kind of shell that I want to deploy. Now I could use MSF Venom again, and I can fire up MSF Console as my listener. But as I said when we looked at that, there are a bunch of canned payloads that you can take a look at. If you go to USR Share, where we've seen a lot of stuff, but we're going to go to web shells, okay? And do an ls. There is a subdirectory for each main architecture that you might want to attack, and you could probably find other ones online. We're going to attack WordPress, which is a PHP site, and we'll take a look. And right away we have this PHP reverse shell.php file. I want to deploy that into this environment. This is a nice shell. I use this a lot in my pen testing activities with the InfoSec students. It's a nice shell, it gives me a nice clean shell, and it works well with the netcat command, using the netcat nc as a listener. So that's the one I'm going to do. So I'm going to go back home, go into my Mr. Robot directory. I'm going to copy usr share web shells php reverse shell.php, and I'm going to copy it into the Mr. Robot directory. Do I have to? No. Okay, this is not like source code that I need to modify that we've seen before. All right, I'm just going to use that one here, but I've got a copy of it because I like doing that. Now I could open this up and modify it for my needs. All right, and then copy it or whatever. But I really want to add it to this template. So I need to open it up in something that can do easy copying and pasting. And we know Mousepad will give us that. So Mousepad, PHP reverse shell, and I'm just going to do the ampersand so I can get my prompt back. Okay, there it is there. Control A, Control C. All right, edit, select all, edit, copy if you wish. Okay, I can probably close that down, but I'm going to minimize it, and I'm going to go and I'm going to add that at the end of my 404 template. Again, I'm trying to hide my behavior here. Maybe because it's based on Mr. Robot, but I'm trying to be a little sneaky in my hacking. So I've taken the contents of that PHP reverse shell.php file, and I've added it after the WordPress get footer function. All right, that's the get footer function for WordPress. Boom, here is my payload PHP reverse shell. I'm not done. Okay, as we've seen, I have to have a path back to wherever I'm running my listener. I know my IP address for Cali is 227. So I'm going to change that. Before I save my work, I'm going to change the IP address back to wherever the listener is running to the IP address of Cali. And I can change or I can use that port. We've seen port 4444. We've seen port 1234. Whatever port you want, make sure it matches when you invoke your listener. Okay? So again, how did I do this? I figured out the username and passwords by using Hydra. Once I logged in, I realized I could manipulate the WordPress website. I've decided to deploy a payload that will give me a remote web shell. One of the ones I prefer is the PHP reverse shell for PHP. WordPress uses PHP. I'm going to use that. I have to deploy it somewhere. There's many places. I may be even able to create a new template. I may be able to upload a file, but I'm going to try and hide my behavior by appending an existing file that's already in the system. Hides my behavior. You rarely see 404 when you go to a WordPress site unless the person has screwed up. All right? So I'm going to append the 404 file with my payload. Find my payload, append it at the end, and then modify it to have a path back to my Kali. Now that I've got that, I can update the file. So I can click on Update File. File edited successfully. Click on Archives. Go back to the 404 template and make sure that your edit is there. Sanity check, because you don't want to do something, it didn't work properly, and then you go forward and your attack fails because you didn't validate that your edit or your work is in place. So perfect. I've got that. That looks good. Now I just need to invoke this. But as we've seen before, you do not invoke the payload before you have your listener running. It's fine. I'm going to close this because I don't need that. I'm going to leave that open. I don't really need those two, but I'm going to leave them open anyway. And I am going to, let's start a listener here. I'm going to call that listener, I'm going to type in the net command, sudo of course, nc -nvlp. I'm not going to use 443, I'm going to use 1234. Why? Because that's what I had in my browser. So I'm going to start my listener on the machine that this payload is looking for. I've got my listener running. Now I simply need to invoke this. So I can go to that address, 209, right? 192.168.56.209, and I can load whatever page I want. Whatever is a recurring theme, let's force it. Look at that, and it happened. That's awesome. And this is what I want you to know. This worked. It's not working now. And now it's throwing a database error. If I take a look, this happens. When you start messing up with sites, you can cause problems. I'm glad this happened. I'm so glad this happened. I am having problems now because of my hacking, because I was hammering it with the login page or whatever. Who knows what was going on? But because I was hammering this site, it's now thrown an error. If I take a look at some of the other pages, all right, that's done. That's done. So nothing else is running, that's good. But because I've been hammering this site, I have basically taken it offline. Okay? The easy way to do this is to go to input, keyboard, and insert Control-Alt-Delete. Let you restart the Mr. Robot. Okay? Now, we should know that our payload has been deployed because we did a sanity check before restarting this machine. All right? We clicked away from our 404 template, we clicked back on it, and our edits were in place. So restarting this should not have lost our modification to the template. But of course we're going to check, okay? Because when you're hacking, you check everything. If you've made a change and it didn't work the way you expected to, and your attack fails because of that, you're going to miss something, okay? So, that's connected. I'm getting calls. I don't know what that is. Oh, I know what that is. I can wait. Okay, so I'm going to go back to dashboard. I'm still logged in, promising. I'm going to shift, reload the page. I'm still logged in, perfect. I'm going to go to appearance. I'm going to go to editor. I'm going to select my 404 template, and my edits are still in place. Perfect. My edits are still in place even after I restart my Mr. Robot target machine. Perfect. So now all I really need to do is to try and reload that 404 page. Oops, that page cannot be found, proudly powered by WordPress. But again, look, you can see it. I can't really put my mouse down on it, but in the lower left corner, it's still trying to connect to something. I don't know what that is. Page not found, page not found. But when I look at my listener, it has spawned a shell for me. First thing, who am I? You're Damon. All right. Again, I don't really like this shell. We're going to need a better shell going forward, so we might as well set it now. We're going to use that Python command. -C. The command we're going to execute is import pty. It's not a command, it's a series of commands. pty.spawn, open bracket, double quotes, bin bash, closing quotes, closing bracket, closing single tick, and I've got a much better prompt. I'm still only logged in as Damon. I want to become root. Now, we've seen a few tricks to do this, and I promised I would try and be done in about 10 minutes, so I'm not going to go through all of them again. We could go through and find server processes running as root. Maybe we'll find something, but we're not going to focus on that today. We could try messing around with sudo and the sudoers command, alright? I'm not going to mess around with that, but those are systems that we've looked at in the past. The other one that I mentioned to you was taking a look at executables, not server processes, not server applications like MySQL, but command line executables that act as root when necessary. The example I gave was the password command. If you want to change your own password, you use the command passwd to change your password. But we all know that we cannot see the shadow file as a regular user. But we're going to update that file with our new password. The way we get around that is that there's a special permission, a special property that you can set executables to have. It's called the SUID bit. And if you set that, that executable can run as root when necessary. Okay? It's more complicated than that. You have to compile for it and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you set that SUID bit, that executable will act as root when necessary. We can search for that SUID bit on executables by using the find command. So I'm going to say find off the root of the file system, and I'm looking for that special perm, and that perm is 4000. But that's going to return a lot of things that I don't, as a regular user, have access to. So I'm going to redirect all errors to that bit bucket that we talked about before. All right. To redirect says redirect all errors to this. All right. Everything in Unix is a file. Everything can be directed to and from files. So I say when you run this command, any errors you get, send them to dev null, what we call the bit bucket. So it's going to go through and try and find everything that has this SUID property set. And I would test all of them, all of them, all of them, all of them. But again, this is curated, so we're going to focus on Nmap. That might actually let me execute something as root. When you think about it, it kind of makes sense. We've seen that with the Nmap command. Sometimes we need to do things as root. Now normally it asks us to do as sudo, but let's see if we can't take advantage of that. So I'm going to run Nmap. Oh, can't find it. So usr local bin Nmap. Okay, so it didn't let me run it. So I wonder if there's a way of doing it in interactive mode. Oh, look at that. Interactive. Go to interactive mode and then press H for help. So why don't I try that? So I'm going to, oops, I don't have my up arrow, so usr local bin nmap -- interactive. So I've got Nmap running in interactive mode, and Nmap will elevate itself to root when necessary. Now, again, I'm going to step out of the narrative here. Not always is Nmap, like this is not a reliable hack in the future, okay? This is trial and error and investigation. But at the end of the day, sometimes this is compiled. In the more recent ones, it isn't. So that's why you try everything in that list. And that's why you also check all those server processes that might be running as root. And that's why you try and attack sudoers file. And that's why you take a look at the operating system and see if there are any exploits that you can download source code for, compile, and elevate yourself to root. You try all of those things all of the time, but I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to focus on what works. Okay? So now that I've had this, let's see if it will execute bin bash as root. Who am I? I'm still Damon. So I'm going to exit out of this invocation of bin bash. Okay, so I'm going to try something else. And right away, I just said, hey, do a shell for me. And right away, I have the hash. And right away, I am root. We could then try and go through and crack some of those passwords, but the fact that I can see the shadow file means that yes, I am in as root. Any questions? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Makes
think that
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah? Okay. A lot going on here. This is kind of where I wanted to end our pen testing activities together because it focuses on a pure web attack. Even our terminal stuff here, all right? That's web enumeration, that's web enumeration. That's a web attack, that's a web attack. That's a listener for a deployed web shell, all right? All of these terminal things are still web attacks. And a lot of ours was going through the web interface as well. Okay? WordPress is a notoriously vulnerable site, but to be honest, the problem here wasn't WordPress. The problem was the WordPress login page and the errors that you see on the WordPress login page and the different ones. And that's the main thing I'd like you to get from today's activity. The more detailed you are in the information you share, the more you may inadvertently give hackers an ability to enumerate what's going on in your website, gather intel on what's going on in your website. It's important to let your users know when there's a problem, but you cannot be specific. You never display errors like SQL errors or PHP errors or anything like that. Hide all those things because any information that leaks gives hackers clues. If someone logs in improperly, hey, something's wrong with your login, fix it. That's all you say. And then it's up to the user. Because if you say, well, your username's right, but your password's wrong, you've given hackers extra intel to compromise your website. Are there any questions? Okay, that's it for me. There is a competency for this. I'd like to see a real detailed report. I don't have to see in that report. Where's my? There it is. I don't need you to show me, like if you take a look at mine, this complete terminal output, I don't want to see that in your report. That is not necessary. But I do want to see like these kinds of artifacts here on yours. Show me that you cracked the username, show me that you cracked the password, show me how you modified the template, show me how you have your listener running. Those are the kinds of things I want to see. Show me that you found something with the SUID pit, and then show me how you became root. That's what I want to see in your report. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop.